This team talk is a short and sweet one. We're not going to keep talking and rambling on, so you don't have to worry about it. It's literally going to be 10 to 15 minutes, if that. And we just want to talk through this approach because, as you know, we've got lots of different approaches, whether you're facing a night out, just a free meal, going for an all-dayer, whatever it may be, a couple of days away, a holiday away. How can you go away with the best mindset and also take care of yourself physically in the best possible way whilst enjoying everything there is to offer? A lot of the reasons why people do go away is to enjoy good food, to enjoy food, drinks. So we're not doing this in a way to limit that. We're just doing it in a way for you to be mindful of what you're eating and consuming while still feeling good and tasting all these foods as well, and actually enjoying it. So this is all about balance, and this is actually for everyone, because even if you are athletes, even if you are striving for extreme physique goals, there's going to be times where you need to use this approach for your own benefit, mentally more than anything. So this is going to be beneficial for most of you in here. Okay, so we'll dive into it, right? How many of you track while away on holiday, just out of curiosity? Kick it off with a question, and we'll get the chat box going on this one.
I was going to say, get a chat box going.
Yeah, 100%. So how many of you actually track? Absolutely not. I know fans definitely not tracking at the moment. To be fair, I don't even know if they know what macros are over there yet, so it wouldn't be a possibility to track. But yeah, so I think most people would potentially not track, but there's reasons why people do still track. And Joanna said she's tracking there. So yeah, I feel like it's more of a guidance thing or a guilt thing, potentially, just to still be aware of what you're doing. And if you've been pushed in the way that we do push you at the start to be aware of tracking and, making sure you're staying on top of how many calories you're consuming. But on holiday, we do want you to have a break from all of that. And even by the end of the program, when you work with us, we want you to be in a position where you're not tracking every single day. We just do a little bit of an accountability thing every couple of days to keep you on track with quantities and portion sizes, depending on the goal, of course. Like, it depends who you are and why you're working with us. But yeah, that's the reason why I asked that, is just to get a bit of an idea of how you go about going on holiday. So what is the holiday approach? Does anyone actually know yet? Has anyone been away on holiday? And we've probably talked to you about this before. Say yes or no in the chat just one more time before we go into it. Do you know what the approach is that we do? I'll take it as a no. We'll just pretend like no one knows and we'll talk like that, right? Okay. So if I get rid of the chat box, if something comes up, Tommy, just you say something, right? If something comes up in the chat box, can you see it?
Yeah, I got up here, man.
Yeah, sound. Okay. So simply put, the holiday approach is when you limit carbs and fats during the day to enjoy anything you like guilt-free every night without the hassle of tracking. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. You enjoy all the foods you love and any food you love and any drink you love whilst you're away on holiday without even tracking. So you take a holiday from that as well. So yeah, this is kind of like a win-win situation. And then people are like, well, how do I do that? Because I want to do it all the time. But we'll talk you through that now, explain that. And yeah, hopefully you'll have a good understanding of how it works. So to break it down, first of all, in terms of the daily calorie intake, right? So let's say you're going away for maybe 5 days. So day to day, what are you doing, right? Most people now, if you're all inclusive or you're going to an all inclusive holiday, or even if you're not, most of the time you're not sitting down all the time to eat the meal. You're probably eating on the go. If you're going for like a city break, it's probably some sort of way of just keeping you going, keeping you full throughout the day. And then most people, I would say, in the night on holiday, sit down and go for a nice meal. We all like somewhat agreed on that's the majority's approach to a holiday. Yeah. Okay. So with that in mind, then, because this may change for other people, but with that in mind, most all-inclusive resorts are like 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when you're on the go, even if it's a city break, something like that, you're very rarely going to be sitting down more than 3 times a day to eat. So it works. This works for most approaches, right? Or most holidays even. So breakfast, what are we doing? In macro form, very simple. Overall, the calories are low because you're keeping protein high. So when you go into plate up your food, just imagine it like this. You're having protein, And then the carbs are low, the fats are low. So AKA you're not actually putting what we would group as carb sources into the program or fat sources into the plate itself. And we're keeping veg high as well. I've also said for this one, even though it says carbs are low, it doesn't mean you cut them out completely, because a lot of people like a bit of fruit with breakfast. And even though some fruits are quite high in carbohydrates because of the sugar content, it's absolutely fine to do that, especially on holiday. Like if you want to enjoy some fruit in the morning, go for it, right? But the goal with this approach is to keep calories low in the first meal and the second meal. So with lunch as well, the approach is very much the same. You'd make sure you plate up plenty of protein on your plate first. Then with carbs and fats, you almost wouldn't purposely put any on your plate. It's going to be low anyway from trace sources of the meat that's involved and the way that restaurants cook the meat. It'll probably contain a lot more calories than usual anyway. And then when we're choosing veg, that's just going to make us feel good and keep us healthy anyway while we're away, right? So the first 2 meals of the day, this is how we do it. We keep the calories overall low. We make sure we hit our protein, because we're focusing on plating up with protein on the plate itself. Keeping veg high because it's going to keep us full anyway, and it's going to make us feel good. And let's be honest, if you're away on holiday and your top's off or you're wearing a bikini, then the last thing you want to do is be going all in on breakfast pancakes, and then you're going to be feeling a little bit bloated or not confident, right? Especially with most people in here, the reason they're here is to kind of like, improve their physique. So we don't want to do that on purpose if we can help it. On the last day, maybe do what you want, but when you know you're going to be sitting there on the beach, maybe think about it just from a point of, do you need that right now? Can you enjoy it tonight? And when you've got your top off, you might want to just think about a little bit more about what you're eating, what you're consuming, yeah? And more importantly, how it's going to make you feel more than anything, not because the calories are bad. So then moving on to the last meal of the day, then when we go to the dinner meal, which could include a main meal, a starter, it could include a dessert, right? Most people may go all out on the last meal and go for a nice restaurant meal, or just usually when people are sitting down chilling, that's when you tend to eat more. That's why in the UK, we tend to be more of an overweight country, because we don't get sun too much. We're all comfort eating because we're sitting in cold, watching films, watching Netflix, and just eating loads of crap that we don't need. You go to, European countries where it is warmer, they have a lot less sort of obesity issues, overweight issues, because they're in the sun, they're active. They don't really want to be feeling like shit, so they don't eat these foods and consume these foods as much as we do. That's not a blanket for everyone, mind. That is just the overall. And those are facts as well. Now, with the dinner, the last meal of the day, we don't really worry too much about what we're plating up here at this point, right? Because you've basically banked the loads of calories that you would have earlier on in the day. And then later on in the day, you've got a lot of calories to play with. So you can either have whatever you want. You can have high carb meals, high fat meals. You don't have to worry about veg because you've had plenty of micronutrients early on in the day. You don't have to worry about protein because you probably had enough of that as well. Now, as a man who's carrying a lot of muscle, you probably still need to plate up a protein just to make sure you're having enough for what you need to carry over. But if you're not training, it's not going to be close to the usual target that you would normally have. So you wouldn't need to worry about it as much either. So that's kind of the overview of it, right? So I'm going to dive into it a little bit deeper now. So the holiday approach. Identity, the reason we say identity is because this is more for a lifestyle client. If you're an athlete and you're going abroad, you do probably need to be a little bit more mindful of what you're doing, depending on the sport you do and if you compete, etc. It's going to be a bit more important. We call this a management, the micromanagement style, right? The reason being is because every day we're making changes based on what we're planning to eat. Whereas a macro management style is more planning in advance. So I would class the macro management style as a free meal because we're making adjustments during the week to plan for something we're going to have on the weekend. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. Okay, so the mindset going into this, right? Again, a lot of you now might have come out of a fat loss phase. You might have been looking forward to this holiday. So we need to make sure that you're aware of the approach and you're aware of the mindset needed to execute the approach well and achieve that sort of guilt-free eating, knowing it's not going to be too harmful. So you imagine this on a daily basis, accepting that you are going to be more restricted in the day to allow for more calories later on. You have something to look forward to every single night. So you've got that motivation as well. So if during the holiday when you're walking about in the city or when you're on the beach laying about and you're having a few drinks, now is the time to like really focus on just looking forward to that meal at the night that you're gonna have. You're gonna have a nice sit down, and if you do start to get a little bit more hungry, then you're aware that you're doing the right thing because you can really enjoy every single night anyway. Again, I'm not against people going all out and enjoying and smashing a load of food on holiday. I'm not. I've been there. I've done it. We all do it at times. But does it really make you feel good for those few hours when you are down the beach or something like that, when you can then come back and have the same amount of calories, but in the night, and then enjoy a nicer meal stress-free? And the reality is the chances of you then going over on what you need is much slimmer based on that. So the action, this is when we restrict carb and calories and fats throughout the day, and just focus on protein and veg. This builds a nice allowance of the calories to consume at night, where I don't know why I've said that, is perfect for when on holidays, so you can enjoy freedom. Yeah, so it's basically what I've explained earlier. This is the action we take. We're restricting calories early on to have them back later on. Why would we use this approach? We would use this approach for anyone on holiday, especially if it's all inclusive. This allows for the first 2 meals of the day, breakfast and lunch, to be mainly protein and veg. This actually allows the client to enjoy the day more, focusing less on the food and actually feeling great with the top off. In the night, this is where people usually enjoy a good meal and drinks out. Now, with this approach, they can have a bank of calories built up to do that guilt-free. This is a great approach for the days surrounding Christmas as well. So this, like I said, is just more of a mindful approach going into it, rather than thinking, oh, I'm on holiday, I'm going to be over consuming calories anyway, so I might go all out. I might as well go all out every single meal. We don't really need to do that to enjoy. And if you do need to do that to enjoy, I would then suggest that that person probably has something they need to address with their relationship with food prior to going away on holiday, or it's highlighting something that needs to be worked on when they come back from holiday. If you're going away with the mentality of, I can't wait to go away so I can eat what I want, you should be able to eat what you want anyway. It's just should be a little bit controlled, right? And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So going forward, let's break it down even further. So now I'm going to show you a series of graphs, right? And it's not all relating to the free meal. It's not, sorry, not the free meal, not to confuse you. It's not all relating to the holiday approach. This is going to show you a series of graphs of what a person's day may look like, depending on the type of person that they are. So it'll actually give you a bit of an insight into what other people's lives are like, how they eat. And this is based off lifestyle as well. So how they may prefer to set up their calories through the day. And a lot of you going through this may identify with 1 or 2 of these, right? So this is what an ideal world would look like. When people say, oh, I'm going to eat 3 meals a day with a dessert at the end, right? So I put a dessert at the end here as well. Everything's going to be balanced. So if I'm going to have 2,000 calories a day, every meal is going to be 500 calories. The reality of that is very slim, and there's no reason to actually do it. There's no benefit to doing it, okay? So showing you the lines then, right? So what I've done is I've averaged it out, not to confuse you further, but the calories per meal and the amount of calories per meal you'd have to have with a clear visual example for maintaining your body weight, for being in a surplus, and for being in a deficit, okay? So again, let's just say that this is 500 calories, each line. So overall, they're having 2,000 calories, and that's putting them in a deficit. Let's say the 2,500 is the middle line, and then 3,000 is the red line. Yeah? Are you all following so far? Yeah, cool. So again, this is an ideal world, an ideal split evenly throughout the day, throughout the 4 meals that this person's having. Now, if someone's got the nighttime munchies, right, and they got a bit of a sweet tooth, this is how they may structure their day if they still want to be in a deficit. So this still does work. This is for someone still trying to lose fat. So earlier in the day, you can see they've cut down below what they could potentially have. Could be 250 calories instead of 500. Same again for lunch. They don't really like to eat in the morning, right? Probably because of how much they eat in the night. And then the last meal of the day, so dinner, they've had a decent sized meal, which would be the usual amount that they could have spread across the day. And then later on in the day, let's just say they've overconsumed and they could have even pushed above this line, and they still, over the course of the day, would have probably had maybe 2,000 calories. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. So again, it's just showing you a different way of how people can structure their day and still end up in the same deficit. So the evening appetite, again, very similar, lower, first 2 meals, meal 1, meal 2. And then the dinner they've pushed up because they like to have a nice big dinner, and they may have a little bit of a snack again towards the end of the day. Then you've got morning fasters, people that literally do not eat until about 12 p.m. yeah, or 11 a.m. or 1 p.m., whatever it may be. They've cut out the first meal because they don't like to eat breakfast. How many people have said that they don't like to eat breakfast? They may fit into this category and the results could be the same. Now, this person, right, because they're cutting out breakfast, they could have pushed up their calorie allowance at any other point. But this is, again, just showing you an example of what some people may do, and then they might not be having the calories that they need, but they could be raising this up and they'd still be in a deficit, if that makes sense. Yeah. And this is more the save it for later, right? So this is more in line, again, very close to what we're talking about with the holiday approach. So they're not having anything for breakfast. Again, they're fasting. They're having a little bit for lunch. They're having a big meal for the dinner. And they're having a tiny little snack at the end as well. Now, if you were to work this out, this may still come to like 2,000 calories. I'm being vague here. I'm just giving you an example, right, of how people structure their days, yeah? So this, again, this may, even though you're seeing a big meal going in, so you see some people who are in great shape and they tend to eat very big meals, but they might not eat often at all. The frequency of meals going in might be low. Now, we don't recommend that because we like to spread things out if we can. But depending on how busy you are, sometimes you can only eat twice a day. And then you do have to just consume as much as you can. It then becomes a question of if that person's trying to gain muscle, are they getting enough, spikes in muscle protein synthesis from protein going in? That's a whole different conversation. When we're just talking about calories and making it basic for the holiday approach, this is what you need to know. So this is the holiday approach, yeah? So as you can see here, you have got breakfast, meal one, which again, we just said protein and veg, or maybe some fruits, yeah, which is a bit of carbs. So you've got, let's say, much below what you could potentially have to still remain in a deficit throughout the day. Same again for lunch, meal two. Now, you've gone out for a meal in the night then, and you've probably had a really nice meal, right? So it's pushed well above. Now, that would probably keep you at maintenance, yeah? Even just without that. Now, you may have gone for a dessert as well, and that's pushed well above. But can you see, even though if you total all these together, it probably still would either have you at maintenance or a little bit above. So you still are probably in a little bit of a surplus, or maybe, depending on the type of person and depending on how all out you go at the back end, you may still end up in a little bit of a deficit if fat loss is still your goal, right? And if you are not really pushing the boat out in terms of trying to eat everything in sight just for the sake of it. If you're just going out for a decent sized meal, let's say it's a 1,000-calorie meal, then with this topped up and that, you're probably going to end up on maybe 2,000 calories. Or less than that, even depending on what these first two meals are like. So I'm not trying to throw numbers in the mix because it's going to get confusing, but I want to show you that visually, when you see this, you realize why it's beneficial. Whereas if you do have the same attitude that most people do have when they go away, this figure here and this figure here will look exactly the same as these two. Yeah? Do you follow me? And then if you've got every single one of them above the red line, then you're just asking for trouble. And then when you come back, you probably are going to think, oh my God, what have I done? Because if you spend a full week or maybe longer really going at it every single meal just because you're on holiday, again, I would personally approach that and say, have you got, I think we need to address something with your relationship with food. There's something going on. You're obviously really looking forward to just going all out whenever you can. There's a problem there. So if you can be a little bit more controlled early on the day, feel good throughout the day, focus on the holiday itself. And then when you get back in the night, go out for a meal, enjoy it, guilt-free, stress-free, and it is going to be much better for you. Is that all good? Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. Okay, so just to touch on a few pros and cons, and then I'll leave it there. And then hopefully we can have a bit of a Q&A and just question us on anything that we've done this weekend with the seminars and stuff like that we've got coming up. I do need to send out invites to you all as well for the summer challenge that we've got going on the 17th of June, just to put that in there now. But I will be sending those out. I think Thursday they'll be going out. We'll be sending the invites out. But anyway, pros of a holiday approach. Number one, you enjoy food guilt-free as you've saved the calories for the evening meals. Essentially, that's what it is. Number two, you have a holiday from tracking. You have a break from tracking. Nice little pun there as well, right? But you do give yourself a break from actually tracking all the time and focusing on your goal all the time, knowing it's not going to throw you off the journey at all because it's still relatively in line with where you want to go. And number three, it limits the damage compared to going on a holiday with no approach in place at all. What I just talked about at the end there with this part here where you could be pushing this up, You could be pushing the breakfast all the way up with loads of pancakes and Nutella. And then lunch, you could be finishing that with a dessert as well. And you're just purposely trying to push it up. So that is another pro to why this is a good to go away with approach than no approach at all. The cons of a holiday approach. So hunger early on in the day will be higher due to lower calories. So technically, if you think about it, you go in low carb in the first 2 meals. And when people do that, they usually do feel a little bit more hungry. Now, a way to counter that is making sure you're having plenty of veg and plenty of protein. It's going to make you feel fuller. But ultimately, there's no argument to say that with less calories, you're probably going to feel a little bit more hungry than if you were to just go out and eat what you want. But is that a price you're happy to pay to then enjoy later on guilt-free? Me personally, I would rather do that. Now, maybe not every day, because I do like breakfast food as well. So you've got to balance it out as well, you know? But this is just a good way to do it guilt-free and not track or anything. The second one is the lack of routine and tracking can frighten people. Now, I know Joanna mentioned at the start that she likes to track a little bit when she goes on holiday. So is that because potentially, you know, you like the structure, you like the safety that comes with tracking and knowing how many calories go in? Now, over time, we'd love to educate you to a point where you feel confident and comfortable to let that go and be able to let it go for a couple of days, depending on your goal. If your goal requires you to track all the time, then track all the time. I know something's jumped in the chat here now. So yeah, I thought so. I thought that might be the reason. It just gives you that confidence, doesn't it? Tracking does. So yeah, that's one thing that's hard to throw away, especially when there's no reason to. But I do believe having a break now and then from tracking is going to be beneficial for your mind as well, to just go away and be like, you know, I can actually be confident enough to just choose the quantities on my plates based off what I've learned now around nutrition. I know this is kind of going to be similar to what I need. Yeah, cool. Third one, potential to overconsume during the evening due to hunger elevating slightly. So the last thing we want to encourage is then a big yo-yo throughout the day, where you are under eating purposely very little throughout the morning to just then go all out in the evening. This approach is there more so to give you freedom, but also give you confidence knowing that what you're doing isn't going to throw you off track. The last thing we want to do is then make you more food focused based on the limitations you've got during the day to then look forward to in the night. So it's a fine balance. It's basically just be mindful in the morning and lunch. Don't restrict yourself seriously. Like, just be mindful, give yourself a nice amount of food, but then in the night you can have the freedom to go all out a little bit and pick the foods that you usually wouldn't. Whereas the other side, the flip side of that, the extreme side of that, is the people that will literally not eat all day to then just go ham in the night and just eat anything they can. So we don't want to be doing that either. So that comes down to you being a bit of an adult as well, though, and communicating with us and asking us for help and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope that that's pretty clear. So this is very similar to a free meal. The free meal approach, most of you have tried this on your plan at some point. We do recommend it for most people because it gives you that lifestyle outside of the gym to look forward to having decent restaurant meals, and just it's a sociable thing to do, isn't it? Yeah, but it's similar to a free meal approach, but on a smaller and on a daily scale. So the reason we would compare it to a free meal, and the pros of a free meal, which is very similar to this holiday approach, is it allows you to live a normal life. As you can see with being on holiday, you've got that, you know, flexibility. So yes, you could say yes to social events guilt-free. That's the whole point of a free meal. It motivates you even more as you have something to look forward to at least once a week. Yeah. But with this approach, it's like on a smaller scale. So you're kind of looking forward to something every day. It gives you a chance to switch off and not cook food for yourself. Again, being on holiday, hopefully that's the goal. But if you're in an apartment, then maybe you do that in the apartment. You cook the meals early on, and then in the night, you look forward to it. You get to go out. And why we never use cheat meals. I just want to touch on this because I'd still have a few clients that refer to the free meal as like a cheat meal. They'll say, oh, I didn't have my cheat meal last week because I didn't want to go off plan. And this is why we want to educate you on the fact that these free meals are included. These calories are calculated and already factored into your program on a weekly basis. So not having them is technically cheating on your plan. We'd rather you stick to the plan we give you, have the allowance that you need. And the reason why we never use cheat meals is more psychological than anything else. The word cheat then has a connotation with food. and it becomes a negative connotation because you associate it with good tasting foods, very nice tasting foods that you like, because you're trying to choose them whenever you get the chance. And then you're already thinking them in a bad way. That's going to create guilt. So it's like, it's a very vicious circle, vicious circle. And it creates a negative loop between the foods you love and your goals, the goals that you want to achieve with your physique. So again, just to go over these points, it creates a negative, guilty mindset around the meal itself. Whenever you're having a cheat meal, if you know you're going out for a cheat meal, you're cheating on the goal that you want. Why would you cheat on a goal that you want? It doesn't make sense. So we want to remove that. Your relationship with food will suffer and it will become worse, 100%. And you're more likely to indulge and binge because, which causing damage and shrinking your weekly deficit. So the reason why that happens is because if you've cheated on your diet, you've had a cheat meal, it's then like, right, what other calories can I fit into this cheat? What other calories can I force myself to eat right now while I'm cheating on my diet? Like it's just very negative. Whereas the free meal approach, you've got a clear allowance of calories as well. So if you did want to really max that out, the reason why we put the allowance is kind of because we want you to know that very rarely you're going to push over that. But if you really wanted to go and max that out because you are hungry and you want to take advantage of every calorie that we give you, then you can then calculate the foods, if it's a Domino's, for example, and fit it into the day. So that does work as well with the free meal compared to a cheat meal. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the holiday approach. The reason why I wanted to do this today is because a few people have gone on holidays and I feel like it'll be beneficial to the group if we go into it a little bit more. But now I'm hoping that there is a few questions that you've got, or if there's questions on anything that we've done over the past, weekends or what we've got coming up, feel free to just Q&A. This is what it's all about. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining last minute. I'm going to set you like a lemon now and just pretend that people ask me questions.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So when I go away, I'm quite active, more active than I am when I'm not necessarily when I'm in work.
Yeah.
So dropping the carb aspect in the morning might be a bit tricky. For example, I know it's not the right time of year, but if you go skiing, you probably need those carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So would you suggest perhaps having like a large meal breakfast and then in the evening and perhaps reducing the midday meal, or say you're going to walk in holiday?
I mean, if you're very active on holiday, I would just intuitively eat. I think I said that word right. So try and be in touch with your body and become more in touch with your body. So you're only there like a week or whatever it is, or 5 days, right? Or maybe longer. So try and just be more in touch with how you feel. Is it actually hunger? Like we done that the other day with the protein test. We touched on that, didn't we, in the seminar? Whereas ask yourself, would I eat a whole chicken right now that's dry? The protein test is a good way to find out if you're actually hungry, because if you're actually hungry, you would eat that and you would happily eat that and enjoy it probably. But if you're not, then you would only be craving foods that really taste good, and that's why you're craving them, because you do like them. So in your case, that's what I would do. Like in the mornings, yes, you're aware of, like, you have a good education now and understanding of what calories are in foods. You also have a good understanding of how many calories you truly do burn from doing these activities. So if you are going skiing, and that does tend to be over a long period of time, so per hour you are probably burning quite a lot of calories, because it's like a continuous low intensity or medium intensity workout, to be fair. It's quite hard. Then yes, you need to be fueled for that, because the last thing you want to be is hungry on the slopes when you're on holiday anyway. But at the same time, you don't want to go all out, because you don't want to be feeling sluggish while you're technically training. So I would just intuitively eat. I would have a similar approach to, you're essentially going and training at that point. It's not really a holiday as such when you ski all day. So I would fuel yourself properly. I would definitely make sure in the morning I'm having foods that make me feel good, digest well. I'd be sticking to my porridge, to be fair, and some fruits, and making sure I have some sort of protein as well before going. But then in the night, then I'd probably be fueling up. And that's the thing with carbohydrates, right? With the time it actually takes to digest and store as glycogen, especially within the muscle, it's a long time. So if you do have a big meal in the night, that's then going to be stored ready for the time that you go skiing the next day. It's not a case of just fueling up that morning of, it's like the next day. So that approach may work the way it is laid out anyway. But yeah,
Okay.
making sure that you eat whenever you need to, 100%. You want to enjoy it as well, don't you? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Are you going skiing soon?
No, but I
All right.
next winter. I was just
Yeah.
wondering what your take was on it.
Yeah, no problem, Fen. Thank you for joining anyway. Fen's just said he's leaving. But yeah, Reese, that was a good question. Yeah, the skiing thing is like it's a training day, isn't it? It's a full-on training day, I would say. You just have a few pints at the top of the slope as well.
That's a problem then, isn't it?
Yeah, then you're trying to ski down. But yeah, with just to touch on the holiday approach to finish then, is there any other questions you've got on it? Because it's just an approach we've got. It's not like the be all and end all. It's a way for people to go away and not fall off the wagon completely and feel kind of confident about it and still enjoy. And I think that's the important part, is not making people feel like they are going to lose all their progress just from going away or stress about it. Yeah, so Joanna, yeah, with the extra calories every week, it is part of your plan. So I would encourage you to have it, because we're basically holding you at a higher baseline we think you are than what you're actually consuming, which is, it can become a bit of a problem when we look to potentially reduce or increase the other way. So that's the only time it becomes an issue, is when we think that you're consuming more calories than what you are. It's just a bit of a miscommunication thing. So what I would do straight away is, like, on the check-in, if you've mentioned that, we would then adjust it on the plan anyway to just what you have been doing.